Thomas Hearne was born near Malmesbury in 1744. He came to London at an early age, and between 1765 and 1771 was apprenticed to the engraver William Woollett. On completing his apprenticeship, he went to the Leeward Islands in the West Indies as draftsman to Sir Ralph Payne, who had been appointed Captain General and Governor-in-Chief of the islands. He returned to England and between 1775 and 6 completed a commission of 20 watercolour views, mainly of the West Indies, to commemorate Payne's governorship. This set contains probably the largest watercolours painted in the 18th century. The complete set was last recorded together in 1810, when the watercolours were sold at auction in London and then dispersed. Until recently, only 3 from the set were known, and only one of these was in England. In 1994, 4 more of the set reappeared at a sale in Denmark. By this date, they were no longer in their original frames, and generally in such a sorry state that they were not recognised. At a subsequent sale in London, they were correctly identified, and 2 were acquired by the Whitworth Art Gallery. In order for the 2 watercolours to be displayed to the public, extensive conservation was required. Much could be done to both stabilise them from further deterioration and to improve their appearance. Each watercolour was examined using a variety of light sources to ascertain the type and extent of damage. Raking light, that is light falling on the surface of the paper at an angle, emphasises joins, creases, tears and losses, and identifies the type of paper, in this case a laid paper with a Whatman watermark. Ultraviolet light shows areas of later repair and retouching, water stains and acidic degradation. The watercolours were also examined and photographed under a microscope. Minute samples of pigment were taken for analysis. The watercolours had been restored previously. This included sticking them down to paper and canvas supports. These supports were in turn attached to wooden stretchers in the manner of oil paintings. Since these were later additions, they were removed to enable conservation to be carried out. The canvas was carefully cut away from the stretcher with a scalpel. The surface of each watercolour was gently cleaned with powdered eraser to remove loose dirt and dust. Although the backing canvas was in relatively good condition, the adhesive had weakened, and it was possible to ease the canvas backing off. The adhesive between the watercolour and the backing paper was tested using a moistened cotton wool swab. The purple coloration indicates the presence of starch. Other tests were carried out to determine the sensitivity of the pigments and the solubility of the filling materials used for old repairs. The large areas of filler and overpaint were removed by careful swabbing. Once it was established that wet treatments could be carried out, a humidification chamber was prepared. This technique allows the very gradual introduction of moisture into the watercolour without causing undue stress. It enables removal of the backing paper, old adhesive and the edging tape. After humidification, the watercolour was turned face down onto a support sheet of clear plastic Melanex to give access to the back. The glue between the watercolour and the backing paper was now moist enough to allow the backing paper to be carefully peeled off. Much of the thick discoloured adhesive was swabbed off at this stage. With the watercolour face up again, the gum strip from around the edges was removed. The 2 sheets forming the primary support separated with a fine spatula. This allowed ease of handling during the washing process. As work progresses, discussions are held between conservator and curator. Each sheet, supported on fabric, was placed onto a special washing screen and immersed in deionized water. Further washing and other forms of wet cleaning were carried out over the following days. Between each process, the watercolour was left to dry. Much discoloration was washed out, the remaining adhesive removed from the back, and the tones and the colour balance of the watercolours greatly improved. Tears were realigned and repaired from behind using fine strips of Japanese tissue paper and adhered with a paste made from pure wheat starch. Traditional Japanese equipment was used for preparing the paste and applying the Japanese paper linings to the watercolours. The back of the watercolour is pasted up. In total, 3 layers of Japanese paper were applied to the back and gently smoothed down. Japanese paper is lightweight and very strong. It is ideal for repairs and relinings such as this. The watercolours were left to dry out after each lining had been applied. The watercolour was relaxed on each side with a fine water spray and was taped face up to a relining board to flatten and dry out. Holes were filled with carefully cut patches. The paper used was chosen to be as similar as possible to the original. This took into account age, type, thickness, colour and surface texture. The patches and other areas of abrasion were retouched and toned in using watercolour to improve the appearance of the pictures. Technical examination by a conservator in the future would distinguish retouched areas as opposed to the artist's original pigment. Mounting and framing of the watercolours was carried out in-house using conservation quality materials. The watercolours were removed from the relining boards and taped to new lightweight support panels. Fillets inside the frames prevented the surface of the watercolours from touching the glass. The backs of the frames were fitted with hardboard and sealed with gummed tape. We have no record of the original frames, so a simple oak moulding in sympathy with the watercolours was chosen. All aspects of examination, analysis and testing, the condition of the object and the treatment carried out were recorded on computer to provide a future record of the conservation work. The condition of Thomas Hearne's 2 watercolour views has now been stabilised, and details hidden by 200 years of dirt and discoloration revealed again. The watercolours provide an important record of the Leeward Islands at a crucial stage in their history and show a significant point in the evolution of the English landscape watercolour. Protected by good quality materials and in a stable environment, they now form part of one of the most important collections of English watercolours outside London.